Yakuza has a lot of amazing cities to visit. It's a sentiment that even non-gamers tend to share due to the implications of virtual tourism, which leads to more praise for the series and its approach to realism and immersion. Plus, I'm sure I don't need to tell you just how many fans of the series visited districts like Kabukicho and Dotonbori just to see some famous landmarks from the games. But obviously, not every city featured in Yakuza is equally praised by the fans. In fact, if you're familiar with the mainline entries, you can absolutely tell which city is often seen as the black sheep of the series, even without looking at the thumbnail of this very video. The city in question is called Sapporo, but people usually call it by the district name Tsukimino. A beautiful winter wonderland filled with a trillion enemy encounters, a Hatsune Miku statue, slippery floors, and so much more. If you haven't played Yakuza 5, you might wonder why people hate this city. Well, let's take a closer look. This is a map of the district. On first glance, it looks pretty standard, with it drawing heavy inspiration from an amazing district in Yakuza 2 called Shinseicho. They even share a prominent tower in the north of the map. But Tsukimino also has two gigantic open parks, where you can have snowball fights, and enough NPCs in the city to fill up Metallica's gig at Monsters of Rock. For all intents and purposes, Tsukimino looks and feels much bigger. That is until you do the unthinkable and actually try crossing the street where there's no sidewalk. There are invisible walls everywhere, effectively rendering 40% of this seemingly large city completely useless. It turns Tsukimino from a beautiful winter wonderland to a series of eerily crowded tunnels with see-through walls, which would be tolerable if it weren't for an even bigger issue plaguing this whole city: the enemy encounters. The streets of Tsukimino are narrow enough as it is, but with the frequency of combat encounters in Yakuza 5, the city just becomes one incredibly janky long battle with no cool soundtrack. From hosts channeling their inner Slavs, to Yakuza who are angry you're not walking at the speed of Kratos carrying a log, you will have to traverse extremely carefully here. Did you bump into someone? You have to fight them. Did someone bump into you? You still have to fight. Did you have the audacity to walk without pressing the R1 button behind John Yakuza? Well, then the omnipotent John Yakuza will get his radar out to say that you're over the allowed pedestrian speed limit of Yakuza 5, to which you promptly answer by bashing him in the face with a street sign. The enemy encounters are single-handedly the biggest problem with Tsukimino, and once you add police patrols to the mix, you'll understand why so many people are soured on the whole experience of this city, and perhaps Saejima's part of the story as a whole. Oddly enough, Saejima's part in Yakuza 5 is the one where you spend the least amount of time actually traversing the city dedicated to you. His story actually starts off in Kamurocho, and then he spends most of his time in prison. Then again, that's kind of a given whenever Saejima is a playable character, and sometimes even when he's not. Beyond that, it takes an additional detour to the mountains and a bizarre drug trip in prison to finally reach the district of Tsukimino. It genuinely feels like this map had the least bit of attention dedicated to it altogether out of any other city. But why is that? Well, let's take a look at another playable district in Yakuza 5, that being Kinecho in Nagoya. While you may not realize it at first by just looking at the actual maps, this city is actually very similar to Tsukimino. But the main difference is that you can actually cross the street freely wherever you want, which makes the frequent enemy encounters in this game a tad more bearable. So why not just use this approach in Tsukimino as well? My guess would be that they wanted each city in this game to feel more distinct from one another. And I get that, but when you take into account that the second new city that you see in Yakuza 5 is just the worst version of a city you'll visit in the late game, it puts a dent on the overall experience. They might as well have just cut one of the cities out altogether and just given all of the positives between the two to a singular map. Then again, this is Yakuza 5, so size and spectacle has to be center stage, even if it is at the cost of consistency at times. But that's a story for another day. Back to the topic at hand, I rarely see anyone speak positively of Tsukimino, beyond its Christmas aesthetic, and that is a shame. Sure, it might not be a very fun city to play through, but it's still really cool. Looking at its real-life counterpart called Susukino, there's a number of similarities between this district and Kabukicho, to the point where, in an alternate universe, this map could have easily wound up being the centerpiece of the whole Yakuza franchise instead of the now legendary Kamurocho. Once you get the Beads of Good Fortune item, which prevents enemy encounters, you can actually explore the city at peace, and you might just fall in love with its simplicity this way. It reminds me of walking around my hometown's Christmas market all through December, where the streets are packed with people happily eating and drinking without a care in the world. When visiting the northern part of Tsukimino, you can especially see what drew the developers to this district to begin with, and it makes it feel like all the squatting hosts and Yakuza with anger issues don't really matter in the long run. It's all about the quiet moments, like this one right here. At least until the snowball tournament starts, and then it's back to messing with the Geneva Convention. I know it's pretty weird having a video with the word hate in its title as the quote-unquote Christmas special for the channel, but this channel as a whole is pretty weird by itself. That's why it's so fun to talk about all these topics with you all. So, if you'll indulge me, grab your favorite glass and pour a drink out for this meme of a map that we all love to hate. Yakuza 5 wouldn't be what it is without it. With all of that said, thank you for joining me for another video. I hope you spend your holidays having a great time and relaxing from your day-to-day jobs or schoolwork. We all deserve a break like this every once in a while. Until next time, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Cheers!